Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Thomas Burr. I'm the Washington correspondent for the Salt Lake Tribune and the 109th president of the National Press Club. Tonight, I speak for all of our members, the greater Washington journalism community, and our colleagues worldwide when I say, with much joy, welcome home, Jason. I was asked many times last year if I knew Jason. After all, many journalists like myself wore pins with the hashtag #FreeJason, and we talked often about him. But I only knew Jason from the news stories and that photo of him grasping, sorry Jason, a very outdated cell phone. I hope that Marty has got you an iPhone by now, by chance. I had never met Jason, but in some ways I did know him, and we did know him. He was our journalism colleague, a fellow reporter, and he was jailed for doing his job. And that's why we spoke out, why we supported his family and the Post in raising attention about his cause. I know Jason would have done the same for all of us. So to kick off tonight's event, which happens to be the start of Sunshine Week, when we call attention to the need for government transparency, I would like to offer a toast to our friend Jason Rezaian. Jason, we celebrated your release from prison, but we know you should have never spent a single day in a jail cell. I pray that a day like today shows you that you were always on our minds and in our hearts. Welcome home, Jason. Major Garrett, CBS's News White House correspondent, who famously rankled President Barack Obama last year for how he phrased a question about Jason during a news conference, could not be with us tonight. But he sent me a note to read on his behalf. Jason, welcome home. As every journalist knows, home is not just where we live and find our family. It is where the story is, where the information lives, and where the chance to inform the world beckons. Jason, your courageous pursuit of this work, your resilience, and your dignity are my ideal. Thank you and welcome home. Now, tonight is a happy moment, but I'd also like to take time to note that there are scores of journalists across the globe who still face detention, government crackdowns, or worse. On a screen outside this room, we will be scrolling the names of nearly 200 journalists who are behind bars right now in Turkey and Bahrain, in China, in Egypt, Eritrea, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. They remain in jail for the crime of reporting. Last year, the National Press Club gave its Obuchan Press Freedom Award to 3 journalists detained overseas. Jason, of course, was one of them. But the other 2 2015 honorees have, unfortunately, still been stuck in prison or are missing. We remember them tonight, and we will honor them tonight. The first is Austin Tice, a freelance journalist from McClatchy and other news outlets who was kidnapped in Syria in 2012 and who has not been heard from since. The other 2015 award winner was Khadija Ismailova of Azerbaijan. She reported for Radio Free Europe, among others, and she produced a number of reports about corruption at the highest levels of the Azeri government. For that reason, it seems, she has been jailed since 2014 on unsubstantiated charges. Tonight, I would also like to spotlight the deteriorating situation for press in Turkey. The Press Club spoke out early this month about the Turkish government takeover of the country's highest circulation newspaper and affiliated news outlets. Too many reporters are behind bars in Turkey, which was number 5 in the world for jailing journalists last year, just behind Iran, Eritrea, Egypt, and the worst offender, China. Here at the National Press Club, we add our voice as often as possible to the chorus of people who continue to remind the world about detained reporters. We speak out so the jailers are not absolved by silence. Jason's case, while unfortunate, gives us hope that public pressure can make a difference, and it prompts us to redouble our efforts for those who still need our help, and so we shall. Before I introduce our moderator, I wanted to give a public thank you to some people who have ensured the National Press Club continues to raise the idea of press freedom, and who were instrumental in keeping the spotlight on Jason's case. They include our executive director, Bill McCarran, my predecessor, John Hughes, and the chairman of our Press Freedom Committee, John Donnelly. Also, big thanks to our members and supporters who wore shirts with Jason's image when they ran our 5K, who participated in our 24-hour readathon of Jason's stories, and anyone who lent their backing to the Change.org petition, who wore free Jason pins or offered their help in any way. Our MC tonight is Jim Sciutto, the chief national security correspondent for CNN, who is the recipient of the Edward R. Murrow Award for his coverage of the 2009 election protests in Iran. Jim is a former diplomat himself, having served as chief of staff to then U.S. Ambassador to China, Gary Locke. I almost said John Huntsman. Sorry, it's a slip of the tongue for me. Jim has followed Jason's case closely and covered his unjust detention. Ladies and gentlemen, CNN's Jim Sciutto.
Thanks so much to everyone for having me here, and thank you to Jason and Yegi, his brother Ali, for the honor of being able to take part tonight. I've long been an admirer of Jason. I've also been a little jealous because he got to work with Anthony Bourdain before I did, and I'll try to get over that. For those of us who spend a lot of time in the Middle East, it's such a welcome break and relief to cover a story with a happy ending. Too often we don't see that, and so many of those stories continue in that part of the world. I met Jason for the first time during the 2009 election protests, and this was before his Washington Post days, and I interviewed him at the time, and I was looking back today through my notes and came across just notes from the interview and the transcript, and not surprisingly, what he was talking about at the time was being a witness to the abuse of the Iranian government, abuse of protesters, physical beatings that he saw in the streets, and accounts from people who had been arrested and suffered far worse behind bars in, of all places, Evin prison. I know, I can only imagine that he never thought he would have to suffer the same fate, become a victim of that abuse. And I know, certainly, from talking to his brother and others, that he had no desire to become the story as opposed to covering the story, and yet he did, but certainly not by his choice. And yet, throughout that, and I know that people in this room know this as well or better than me, that he handled it, and we've seen that on his return home, with no bitterness, no anger, and that, from what I can tell, especially from spending time with Ali in the last few months, is a family trait and something to be admired. We are tonight joined by such an illustrious group of people from the news business, government officials, Jason's family as well, many of them very involved in helping get him free. And Jason is free tonight, as our buttons show. One giant of journalism is someone who literally requires no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. He was famous for ending the career of a president, helping to end one. But I think more importantly since then, just as a journalist who's a great admirer of him and his work, is how many careers he inspired in myself and others, how many careers, in effect, he began through his work early on and continuing, inspiring really an entire generation. And through that, and I know this from many colleagues who've worked with him, helping them along the way very generously. You know, of course, that I'm talking about Bob Woodward. Bob Woodward is with us tonight, and he'll be our first speaker.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Where are you, Jason? Are you hiding? Yeah, he's back there, no necktie. Wow, standards have been lowered. 545 days in an Iranian jail. And you try to think about what that meant. No rights, no due process, no justice, violence around the corner, the physical and psychological isolation. I tried to think about this a little bit more this morning, and all of that is enough to really take yourself away from yourself. What I think was most stunning is he knew he was innocent. And there had to be anger, there had to be rage, and one of the questions that I think Jason is going to answer in his book is, how do you control and tame that rage and that knowledge that you're innocent? In the 1970s, Stanford did a prison project in which they wanted to test people who were innocent, and they were volunteers, and they were going to put them in a mock prison for 14 days. After 6 days, they called it off because no one could take it. Very remarkable man, remarkable what he's done. The question is, is he's there in this prison, who will listen, who will act, who obviously, I think he knew everyone cared, but it couldn't be proven to him. And that answer, who cared and who worked on this, and I think it's not widely known, but it's always nice to put things out that are not widely known, that the Washington Post and its insurance company literally spent millions of dollars on working for his release and getting him out. And this is a man, he can't say much now because he's going to save it for his book, but this is going to be a great book about him, his ordeal, and the nature of life, not just in a prison, but in a country where there's no free expression. Next. Thanks.
Bob referenced there that there are so many folks who were involved in securing Jason's release whose efforts are largely anonymous. They certainly were as it was happening, and I think still to this day, the degree of it. I certainly look forward to reading Jason's book. Covering this story as it was happening was difficult because a lot of these negotiations, understandably, were taking place in secret, as they should be when someone's freedom is at stake here. And of course, as a journalist, I was pestering people, Ali included, to find out if they were satisfied with the efforts on the behalf of his brother. And that's a difficult question to answer because it's natural for all of us to become impatient in these circumstances. But of course, Ali couldn't talk at the time about all the various levels of diplomacy that were being exercised to try to get this done. Now, one of the most tireless advocates for Jason's release was his congressman, Jared Huffman. And as you know, in Washington, Congress is a target of criticism at times, some of it deserved. But I think in this context, we saw Congress, our representatives, working at their best, and tirelessly, and oftentimes without credit as it was happening. And that's a tribute to the work of Jason's own Congressman, Jared Huffman. He's here tonight, so I'd like to introduce Representative Huffman.
Well, good evening, everybody. I have learned two things about my constituent, Jason Rezaian, that suggest to me that you have put together the perfect welcome home, happy 40th birthday party for him. The first is that he loves his family very much, and so I'm delighted that together with Jason tonight is his beautiful wife, Yegi, and his brother, Ali. I think his mother, Mary, may be around here somewhere, but she'll be here this week, I understand, and he's together with family, and that is one reason why this is a terrific evening for him. The second thing is that he takes enormous pride in being a journalist, and what greater tribute could a journalist ask for than a party at the National Press Club with a who's who of the national media. Even more than being proud of being a journalist, Jason is proud of being a Washington Post journalist, and so I know how much it means to be surrounded by so many, I understand maybe as many as 100 colleagues from the Washington Post tonight. This, of course, is the newspaper that never wavered in its support of him during his 18th-month ordeal in Evin Prison. Journalism is a little like congressional politics these days. It's pretty rough. And you can just ask the growing list of refugees from Breitbart if you are wondering about that. That's what you see when a media company treats its journalists like disposable parts. But if you want to see, someone from Breitbart here, okay. If you want to see what happens when a newspaper cares about its journalists, look no further than Marty Baron and his team at the Washington Post. Because without their Herculean efforts and without also persistent, focused diplomacy by Secretary John Kerry and his team and the advocacy of so many others in this room tonight, including the Swiss diplomatic corps, and I know our friends from Switzerland are with us tonight, right over. I think it's fair to say without all of this, Jason would be spending his 40th birthday in a much drearier setting than the National Press Club. So I want to propose a few toasts real quickly. You can either drink several times or wait and drink once when I'm done. But my first toast is to everyone here who worked so hard for so long to make sure Jason did not have to celebrate his 40th birthday in Evin Prison. Now, I also want to toast the man himself, Jason Rezaian, for being the kind of guy that makes the 2nd Congressional District of California very proud. Jason is a remarkable combination of intelligence, thoughtfulness, a gentle wit, and modesty, and all of this makes him very credible. He's a guy you want to listen to, you want to take seriously, but also makes him instantly likable. He's already done amazing things in his 40 years, but I actually think he's just getting started. So my second toast is to Jason himself. Thankfully, we have learned that Jason's qualities include strength and resilience, which one needs in order to turn 40. Jason asked me a few days ago if I had any advice to him, as if I'm some, elderly seer that can pass on advice to youngsters about these things. If I had any advice now that he's entering his 40s. And since I am now looking back nostalgically at my 40s, I flippantly said, it's a bobsled to hell. To which he immediately responded, after what I've been through, put me on the ride. So Jason, to you, and may it be a great ride through your 40s and beyond. My third and final toast, at the risk of sounding like a politician, is to the United States of America. When Jason first got home, he told his colleagues at the Washington Post, quote, "No other country would do so much for an ordinary citizen," and Jason is right. Even in an election year where it often feels like our country is taking leave of its senses, it's still a great country, and it still does remarkable, extraordinary things for its people, and we can all be proud of that. Thank you.
So there's another country that did its share of the work here. As you know, we don't have diplomatic relations with Iran, so our representative there is the Swiss. During my trips to Iran, I've been lucky enough to get invitations to the residents there for a little break. It's a little slice of Europe in Tehran, including some of the tastes of Europe and maybe some of the beverages of Europe too, which are harder to find elsewhere in the country. We have Ambassador de Hinden here today. If you're not aware, you should be aware that the Swiss ambassador to Tehran was essential and involved at every level of this, and that's Julio Haas. And I remember the weekend that Jason was released, as we were beginning to get wind of this, I called him on his cell phone, and this was sometime on Saturday, so right in the middle of it, which I did not know at the time was right in the middle of it. And if you've ever met him before, his voice comes up on the phone. He sounds a little bit like a Bond villain, I've always thought, although much friendlier. And he said, Jim, I am very busy right now. And as I learned later when I interviewed Brett McGurk about how this was going down, he let me know that Ambassador Haas was giving him minute-by-minute updates of what was happening on the tarmac there, including when there were delays and when they were chasing folks all over the airport to find out where Yegi and Jason's mother were. So I hope that I didn't delay things unintentionally in any way. But the key is that Switzerland did its part here enormously, and I've heard that from U.S. diplomats and certainly from Jason's family. Ambassador to Hindon, Swiss ambassador to Washington, essential to that as well. We're lucky that he's here tonight, including with his team, so please, a round of applause for Ambassador to Hindon.
Good evening, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here among you tonight. This is an evening I waited for a long time, even before I knew when it takes place, where it takes place, and whether it would take place at all. During the 14 months, my colleagues, mainly my colleagues in Tehran, were involved in negotiations to get Jason Rezaian and, of course, all the other prisoners free. Therefore, Swiss people, my colleagues in Switzerland, were following what happened, and when we learned that Jason was freed, there was not only happiness in the United States, but also back in Switzerland. Switzerland, as it has been told, represents the interests of the United States in Iran since the 1980s as protective power. Switzerland is a neutral country, but neutrality does not mean that we turn our back to the world. On the contrary, it is a commitment to play a useful role, a role as we played in the context now with the freed prisoners. So we were very happy about the warm reactions, and of course also I would very much thank for all the kind words with regard to Switzerland, starting with what President Obama and Secretary Kerry said, up to the endless emails and letters and posts on the social media we got. Thank you very much. The most important is, I will not come with many toasts now, the most important is that we have tonight Jason Rezaian among us, and that he is free and that he can celebrate his birthday, his 40th birthday among us. Thank you very much for your attention.
So, although the U.S. doesn't have diplomatic relations with Iran, you know that there was an enormous amount of difficult diplomacy that went in from the American side. Brett McGurk was there from the beginning, and he was there on the ground with them and flew them out of the country. Admiral John Kirby, actually now Mr. John Kirby of the State Department, involved from the beginning. There were also two State Department employees, FSOs, Katie Ray and Jenny Farrar, who I know greeted Jason as he arrived, but were very key in just that initial welcome out of Iran and back into, well, first Germany, then back on here into the U.S. I also know that a special friendship formed, I'm told, between Jason and another former prisoner of Iran, Ambassador John Lippert, who was taken in 1979 and released 444 days later, and I believe he's here tonight, so I thought we might give him a round of applause. And at the top of this was Secretary of State John Kerry, Whenever we traveled with him, including for the nuclear negotiations, he would always make a point of saying that he never leaves a meeting with the Iranian side without mentioning Jason Rezaian's name, and also the other prisoners, Amir Hekmati and Saeed Abedini. Secretary Kerry could not be here tonight, but for those of you who were at the Washington Post for Jason's first welcome home on January 28th, you'll remember that he had very moving words, and I remember watching, he even brought a tear to his eye. So we wanted to show you a clip of that tonight, just for those of you who missed it. We'll have a listen to the Secretary of State.
Thank you. This is a special, special time, man. Happy to have you. Thank you. In the military, as you all know, and in other dangerous callings, the most sacred pledge that you can make is to never leave a buddy behind. Like most pledges, it's a lot easier to say than to do. So no matter how great the effort, and it was really special, your folks here at the Post, the senior leadership, did an absolutely remarkable job everywhere. And they were everywhere, and consistent. And Jason, you have the best bosses you could have in that regard. But despite all of that effort for everybody, this gnawed at us because we sensed the wrongfulness. And we knew that Jason and others were living the consequences, 545 days. So I will tell you frankly that a week ago on Saturday was really one of the days that I enjoyed the most as Secretary of State. In our era, roughly 2/3 of the reporters who die violently are killed not in spite of their profession, but because of it. And they are attacked for what they have written, silenced for what they have witnessed, or kidnapped for the leverage that their capture might provide. The truth is that independent media, reporters, broadcasters, photographers, bloggers, even cartoonists are under constant pressure today, whether physical or political. And here we are, well into the 21st century, and yet only about 1 person in 6 lives in a country where the press can truly be described as free. So it is up to us, up to you, up to the defenders of liberty to close ranks. And this begins with the recognition that no government, whatever its pretensions and whatever its accomplishments, can fairly call itself great if its citizens are not allowed to say what they believe or are denied the right to learn about events and decisions that affect their lives. So let me underscore, a country without a free and independent press has nothing to brag about, nothing to teach, and no way to fulfill its potential. These detentions, each and every one of them, defined for us an injustice, and the time lost can never be reclaimed. But Jason, we are all so delighted that you are back now.
Yeah, and any doubt you have that that was not something personal for Secretary of State John Kerry, you could see very much in his comments there and the emotion. I think for journalists, many of us in this room, I'm sure you feel the same way, that when you cover stories in places where the press is a target, you often hope and rely on the support of your bosses, of your organization, while you're there, before you go, and in the horrible prospect that something happens to you, that they will do their best to take care of you. The Washington Post truly did their best. And I'll tell you, as a journalist watching that happen, who's not from inside the team but outside the team, I was impressed. I think it's a tribute to the nature of the business we do. Washington Post did not pull its punches, and Marty Barron at the top certainly did not as well. And I think that's enormously admirable at a time when not all organizations do that. So Marty Barron, executive editor of the Washington Post, member here, of course, of the National Press Club, and I'm sure one of the happiest people here tonight to be able to welcome Jason home. Marty Barron.
Thank you all for being here. You know, I was overjoyed back in January to be among those who greeted Jason as a free man at the Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. And I was moved, like everyone else there, later that month when Jason appeared and spoke at the grand opening of the Washington Post's new offices. And today offers another occasion for gratitude and for celebration. This gathering at the National Press Club also serves as a reminder. A reminder, first, that none of us in the press should take our freedoms for granted. Jason's liberty was taken from him in an instant. No one could have anticipated it, and those days in prison are 545 days he can never recover. An injustice that will never be rectified. Jason's arrest and his imprisonment was also a sign of how fragile freedom can be. While Iran committed this offense, it needs to be said that our freedoms cannot be taken for granted anywhere, not even in our own country, where we now hear malicious suggestions that we should be legally harassed and financially pressured as a way of keeping us in line. Fortunately, governments worked with compassion and conscientiousness to obtain Jason's release. We are grateful to so many for their dedication, in particular to the US government and the Swiss government and their representatives here today. Thank you so much. Tonight's event also reminds us that we in the press depend on each other when our freedoms are threatened. That is where our host comes in. All of us at the Post are enormously thankful that the National Press Club pushed so vigorously and consistently for Jason's release. Under the leadership of past President John Hughes and Executive Director Bill McCarran, the club assured that Jason was never forgotten. And I want to thank my colleagues at the Post, in particular Doug Gell, our foreign editor, who is here somewhere, I'm not quite sure where he's gone, who was the point man every step of the way from the very beginning on every aspect of Jason's case. And it was really a team effort. Fred Ryan, our publisher, was involved every step of the way, coordinating response. Our legal team, Jay Kennedy, our general counsel, Jim McLaughlin, deputy general counsel, our outside counsel at WilmerHale, Bob Kimmett, and Dave Bowker. Dave is here today. We're so grateful I'm so grateful to all of you for everything that you did to obtain Jason's release. And that kind of support stands as an example for all of us in the press. Because when the freedoms for any one of us are denied, the freedoms for all of us are at risk. So tonight is a joyous celebration of Jason's return to a life that was stolen for 18 months. So Jason, welcome home. And to Yegi, welcome to your new home. And to everyone, let tonight also be a statement of our resolve to never give up and to always pull together whenever our freedoms are threatened. Thank you very much.
So you might not know, although I'd be surprised if you didn't know, that Jason's a little bit of a Golden State Warriors fan, which to this longtime New York Knicks fan, as far as I know, it's sort of a B-rate West Coast basketball team, D-League or something like that. I don't mean to draw on your early editors will always tell you not to draw false causality between things, but I did a little research on the Cavs, rather the Warriors' performance before and after Jason's release. Listen, let the facts speak for themselves. January 16th, Warriors lose to the Pistons. Jason's released on the 17th into the 18th. January 18th, Warriors beat the Cavs with LeBron James by 34 points. Steph Curry scores 35 points. I'm just saying, they lost to the Pistons before he was released. They beat the Cavs the day after he was released. Now, I know that he's got a lot of sports welcome homes. He's going to be sitting courtside. He was telling me a couple of times he's going to throw out the first pitch at the A's game, another West Coast B-grade professional team for this Mets fan. I'm happy to have a surprise tonight because among the many folks welcoming him home are a couple players you might have heard from and a coach from the Warriors. Let's have a listen.
Hey Jason, Steve Kerr here from the Warriors. I understand you're a big Warriors fan, so we can't wait to get you out to a game, and so happy you're home. Happy birthday, have a great day.
What's up, Jason? Klay Thompson here of the Golden State Warriors. No, it's great to have you home. Thanks for your support. We hear you're a huge Dubs fan. Hope to catch you at a game soon. Let's keep this thing rolling, and go Dubs.
I tried to get a Knicks welcome home, but they weren't available. I'm sure that would have meant a lot more to you, you know. Great team this year. We do have other folks who've been watching for you, and because I work for CNN, I'm going to take advantage of the podium tonight and give you a local endorsement from a colleague of mine you might have heard from. A bearded colleague of mine.
I'm Wolf Blitzer in the Situation Room, and we have some really great news. We want to welcome home Jason. We are so glad that he is free, that he is home, that he is enjoying this night and his birthday. To Jason, happy birthday. We all look forward to seeing you very soon. We're so proud of how you conducted yourself through this awful ordeal. We appreciate your professionalism, your sincerity, and your dignity. On behalf of all of us here at CNN, welcome home.
So there's another guy in the room who did a little bit of work to get his brother's story out there and to get him free, his brother Ali. I remember interviewing him, this is, about 10 months ago, and the way he described it to me is that he, because of course, as we know, the father was from Iran, that he and his brother felt betrayed by Iran, a country that they'd put their trust into. And I always found, and I was saying this earlier tonight, that Ali did something that would have been very difficult for me to do, but I admire, which is just hold his own, be strong, probably to some degree like Jason himself, keep that anger, which had to be there, in control, and just work hard to get him free. And I grew to admire that as I came to get to know him over the last few months. I'll just share a personal story because I found myself out in Mill Valley this past summer because we were having a baby out there, and my wife's sister's from Mill Valley, and we got to do some swimming in Ali's pool, and my sons got to play with his very special collection of Star Wars Legos. But what struck me is that we were both waiting for our families to be complete. I was waiting for a child, and we had our little girl in July, but Ali and his mom and others had to wait a lot longer till this year. But just personally, I want to say how happy I am for you guys, because for all of us, it's been a very personal story to cover. So, more importantly, Ali, here's your chance to give him the ovation he deserves tonight. Here's Ali Rezaian.
Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks, Jim. I think I just want to say thank you to the National Press Club, to the Washington Press Corps, and everybody in the media that's helped us over the last 20 months. You know, it was 367 days ago that I walked into this building for the second time at 6 a.m. They'd signed me up to do about 20 interviews and then do a press conference afterwards. And I just figured that was normal, so okay, I'll go do that. So Doug Gell came out and met me here, and Bill and John and everybody at the press club set it all up, and one after another, we did our interviews, including the one where we couldn't hear the person in Fresno, but we were able to answer all the questions somehow. They didn't take us off the air, so it must have been okay. But really, it's appropriate to be here in the press club. It was February that I came here for the first time with Delphine from Reporters Without Borders, and she introduced me to Bill and to John, and they said, you know, we're the National Press Club. I said, that's great. I love clubs. Got a bar. That's awesome. Let's go. And they said, you know, this is really important to us. This is something we want to get behind, and we want to put the resources of the press club behind these efforts. It's unacceptable that Jason's been held there at that point for almost 200 days. So a few weeks later, we came out and started that process of doing media, and that really kicked something off. Even by then, it had been longer that Jason had been held than any other Western journalist had ever been held in Iran. We knew we needed to do something different, and you know, the press club helped us do that. They really helped me go from thinking week to week to thinking longer term. I didn't want to accept that we could be doing this for 18 months. At that point, it had been about 6. I just didn't want to accept it. Every week it was, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What's coming up? And they really forced me into the thinking longer term. And with the help of the press club, with the help of Reporters Without Borders, Committee to Protect Journalists, Change.org, but most importantly, the Washington Post, and just reporters around the world, we were able to generate interest in the story that just kept on growing and growing. I never would have thought at that point that Jason and maybe me would be involved in all the things that happened, you know, coming up in the news as we were talking about JCPOA, talking about the presidential election, all those things, and it just kept on coming up over and over. No one ever forgot about Jason. It just didn't happen, and that's because of the folks here in this room, the folks that you guys support, and the profession that you're all in. So I'd like to say thank you to you all for that. Thank you to all the journalists out there who've covered the story and who've welcomed Jason back. And most especially, thank you to the Post for putting it all together. Welcome home, Jason. Happy birthday.
So there is a voice we and the world hasn't been able to hear much from yet. A skilled journalist in her own right. Jason's wife, Yegi, as you know, was taken to prison with him, held in solitary confinement herself, then released, but kept in an imprisonment of a different sort for months after that, with those rare meetings together, but just that same fear as to how long this ordeal would last. And you'll remember, I'm sure you've read the stories of that final several hours on the tarmac looking for her. The plane wouldn't take off without her, and supplied us all with an Argo-like finish to this story. Thankfully, still a happy one. Yegi, it was an honor to meet you for the first time tonight, and I know many folks here are just feel very honored and special to hear your voice tonight on this story. Please, let's give a round of applause to Yegi. There you are.
Thank you, everybody. This is my first time, so. On behalf of Jason and myself, I would like to thank each and every one of you guys for your support during our ordeal. For 545 days, we lived a nightmare that we could not have imagined. But so many of you guys did so much to keep our story and Jason's story alive and to make sure that no one forgot about him. Our job as journalists is to tell stories that needs to be told and find issues created in darkness or hiding in the shadows and bring those stories to the light. That is a great responsibility we take on as journalists. But I stand here before you tonight as living testament of the rewards that can come true and can come forward from our work. Your efforts meant so very much to Jason and I during those 18 months, and we will forever be appreciative. Now, Jason and I are fortunate to spend our life together, our time together, taking long walks, having dinners with friends, and beginning a new life here in the United States. He's introduced me to his favorite burrito spot in Marin County. And with great patience, he got me up to speed on Star Wars, which I've never watched before. And it was a prerequisite to our wedding, to our marriage, but he sacrificed it so we could enjoy the last movie together. Big or small, I cherish each and every moment with Jason, and I look forward to the new life that we're gonna start here in the United States. To know Jason is to love him. And as we gather here together to celebrate his 40th birthday, I feel incredibly blessed and fortunate to do so, and be here by his side tonight and to be here with all of you guys. Jason came into my world, and with his passion for living every second of life, with his deep sense of humor, and even with his extraordinary cravings for trying new exotic food, changed everything around me. He became my best friend, my mentor, because I was not a journalist before him, true love, and finally my husband. But more than thank you. But more than anything, I fell in love with his words. I told him once that I'm so proud and I feel so lucky to have a journalist husband. I told him this is very different. And well, it was very different. There are just so many people that I have to thank you. That I have to thank them. And it includes most and foremost everybody at the big family of Washington Post, including Master Jeff Bezos, who is now dear Jeff to Jason and me. Marty Barron was and is terrific. Jason and I see you as a role model in our journalism career. Douglas Jail, who has not been mentioned a lot tonight, but he deserves it. He took care of us like his own children, although he's too young to be our father. The legal team at WilmerHale office, particularly Ambassador Robert Kimmett, who I didn't know before, but now I know him, and he's Baba Bob to me. Baba means daddy in Farsi, so I call him Baba Bob in Persian. The National Press Club people, all of you are amazing. This party means so much to us. Bill, Tom, John, for helping keep Jason's story alive and out in front. The Swiss ambassador, Julio Haas, he is my hero. If it was not for him, I would not be here tonight. He ate a sandwich and drank a Sprite on tarmac to make sure that I will get into the airplane. and my great family. They were incredible, and they are, to make sure that I feel comfortable and feel home. My brother-in-law Ali, our tireless advocate, my respect for you grows every day as I find out about what you did for us more and more. My mother-in-law Mary, who is unfortunately not here tonight, he was a real supporter. He was my rock and my shoulder to cry on throughout all those 18 months. And lastly, to my parents who are not here, I'm sorry. They have provided love for me and strength, and they helped me to get through, I'm sorry, those days. I miss them terribly. So that's it. Thank you guys very much.
I would love to invite Ali, Jim, Mr. Ambassador, Marty, anyone else who spoke tonight. It would be fantastic if you want to come up. Jason, if you'd like to come up as well for just a moment. I don't know if there's anything that could top what Yegi just said. I was thinking earlier today that possibly, Jason, your meeting with President Obama might have been the top highlight of your day. But I think what your wife just said might have to be the most amazing thing I've heard in a very long time. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you might have heard today, we've hinted at this slightly tonight. Tomorrow is Jason's birthday. And so I would love if you would join me in singing happy birthday to Jason. We have cupcakes coming out. We have cookies around. There's cake as well. But if you all join me in singing happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jason. Happy birthday to you. Here comes your cake. We didn't put 40 candles on it. I'm sorry. I apologize. But you can still blow them out. Go for it.
Nice. I need some help.
We'll let him blow out his own candles. Hang on. So I was just handed something, Jason, while you were down there. I wanted to read for you. This is from the Office of the Mayor of Washington, D.C. Dated March 14, 2016. Whereas Jason Rezaian began his journalism career for publications such as the San Francisco Chronicle and the Monocle, penned inside Iran and was based in Iran for 4 years prior to being the Tehran correspondent for the Washington Post in 2012. Where he made it his mission to change the perception of his ancestral homeland for the welfare of all people. And whereas Jason became known for his persistence, perseverance, and loyalty and upheld the belief that truth will overcome the injustice of his captivity. And whereas Jason has been and will continue to be an inspirational figure, as we acknowledge his numerous contributions and how Jason influences the lives of persons in our country, may we celebrate the strength and the love of family and a warm embrace of friends to overcome the loss of time. Now, therefore, I, the Mayor of the District of Columbia, do proclaim March 14, 2016 in Washington, D.C. as a day of justice in honor of Washington, a day of justice in honor of Jason Rezaian. Jason, I have one more thing for you if you'd like to come back on stage, but while you do so, I'd like to do a few thank yous real fast. Again, these events take a lot to put together. Thank you to our Executive Director, Bill McCarran, my predecessor, John Hughes, the Chairman of our Press Freedom Committee, John Donnelly and his team, Rachel Oswald, Sean Lingus, all of our board members, officers, and members. A special thanks to the Washington Post, Marty Barron, Doug Gell, your public relations friends. Thanks to our speakers tonight, our special guests joining us tonight, White House Correspondents Association President Carol Lee, Fox News Greta Van Susteren, CNN Jim Sciutto for hosting, representatives of the Swiss Embassy, and our friends at WilmerHale, the law firm that helped with Jason's case. Also, Congressman Steve Cohen and Andre Carson, Delphine Hulgund with Reporters Without Borders, Courtney Radish of their committee to protect reporters. Also grateful for the support and three wonderful sponsors, the National Beer Wholesalers Association, with special thanks. There's applause for that part. Special thanks to CEO Craig Persner and Rebecca Spicer, a National Press Club member, and Senior Vice President, who were able to join us tonight. Also, thanks to the folks at the Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of America and the State Department Credit Union for their support. Finally, thanks to Michael Kovna, a cartoonist of the Washington Post, for his drawing of Jason. I have one thing left to present to you tonight, Jason, which is something that we could not present to you earlier today. Also, earlier before now, for you and Yegi, your membership cards to the National Press Club. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a great start, but I hope to welcome a lot more journalists to this stage when we get them free as well. And thank you so much for being here.